Alright, so let's take a minute to talk about number lines a little bit. You guys know most of the important things about a number line. Here's the 0. That means that's your starting point on any number line. Anything to the right of the 0 is positive. Anything to the left of the 0 is negative. So if I wanted you to graph -4 on your number line, you would go over here to the 0 and go to the left towards the negative 4 places. 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's where my -4 is located. One thing you haven't been exposed to a lot before is going to be absolute value. Absolute value just means the distance that a number is from 0. It's represented with this up and down line, sort of looks like a touchdown signal. So this is the absolute value of 3. This right here is the absolute value of -3. All these want to know is what is the distance of each of these integers from 0. So let's start with the absolute value of 3. The absolute value of 3, I'm going to start at 0 and figure out how many steps would it take me to get to +3. That's 1, 2, 3. So the absolute value of +3 is 3. Now for -3, I'm going to also start at 0. And I want to know how many steps will it take me to get to -3. That's 1, 2, 3 steps. Which means that the absolute value of -3 is also 3. Absolute value is always a positive number. Absolute value represents distance, and distance cannot be negative. So whenever something asks for the absolute value of an integer, your answer is always going to be positive. Okay, one of the hardest things when we're trying to do integers is going to be knowing which ones come first on a number line, or knowing how to put them in order. So let's see if I was given a few integers and told to put them in order on a number line. So we need to figure out what the value of each integer is. First, I'm going to look at 2, the absolute value of 2. The absolute value of 2 is equal to 2. The second number is -1. That one doesn't have anything fancy around it. No parentheses, no absolute value signs, so I'm just going to write -1 again. Then, this one has parentheses. It says the opposite of -3. Well, I know where -3 is on a number line. The opposite of a negative would be positive. So this is +3, and this is the opposite of the absolute value of -5. I know that the absolute value of -5 would be +5, and that the opposite of that would be -5. So now that I have these integers labeled, I can put the new values in order. From least to greatest, this would be -5, -1, +2, and +3. The only problem with that is not actually putting the integers in order, so I need to go back in and put the original integers in order from least to greatest. -5 corresponded with the opposite of the absolute value of -5. -1 was just -1. +2 was the absolute value of 2. And +3 was the opposite of -3. You need to make sure that when you're ordering integers that you can put the original integers in order, not just their values. And lastly, let's talk about trying to find greater than, less than when we're talking about integers. This is done very similar to how we order integers on a number line. Let's say I want to find which one of these is greater, the absolute value of -2 or the opposite of -4. My first step is going to be to figure out what the value of each of these is. I know that the absolute value of negative 2 is equal to 2, and that the opposite of negative 4 would be positive 4. So now I should be able to compare these. Which one is bigger, 2 or 4? 4 is going to be my larger number, which means that the alligator mouth or the Pac-Man mouth is going to face the larger number. But what happens when I'm not quite sure which one's bigger? If I gave you a number like this, negative 6 is greater than, less than, or equal to the opposite of the absolute value of negative 5. Well, my first step again, figure out what the values are of both of these. So negative 6 is just negative 6. The opposite of the absolute value of negative 5 would be negative 5. Well, let's pretend that I don't really know which one of those is bigger, negative 6 or negative 5. An easy trick would be to make yourself a number line. It doesn't even have to be a fancy number line. Just something with enough numbers on it to help you out. So this is negative 5. And let's put my points on there. I know that negative 6 would go right here. And negative 5 would go right next to it. Well, the way you can tell which one is larger, whichever one is further to the right, since this is the positive side, is going to be your bigger number. On this graph, the negative 5 is farther to the right, so that is your larger number. Okay, that should have taken care of some absolute value, ordering, and comparing integers for you. We'll see you again next time.